Hi, I'm Ayanda ROJI. In this video, we'll introduce the module on public spaces. We will see why public spaces matter and why it's important to co-produce them to promote the right to the city. According to the Charter of Public Space, public spaces are places publicly owned or of public use, accessible and enjoyable by all, for free and without a profit motive. Public spaces are a key element of individual and social well-being, the places of a community's collective life, expressions of the diversity of their common natural and cultural richness, and the foundation of their identity. This is why working on public spaces means working on a wide range of issues such as safety, social inclusion and justice, identity, health and well-being, environmental aspects, the formal and informal economy, etc. To create and safeguard public spaces, the participation of all is important. The users of the spaces, governments, neighborhood associations, commercial actors, among others. I will therefore look at three broad areas around public spaces through the example of the city of Johannesburg in South Africa. The first one is around identity. The second one focuses on safety and inequalities. And the third one looks at informal economy. These three areas show that public spaces are universally important and particularly vital in African cities. I will start with the identity. One of the core challenges facing African cities is rapid urbanization, where cities are growing in both size and density. This means that Africa's cities are confronted by a wide array of challenges, such as those of an inclusive economy, including the provision of services and infrastructure. In our increasingly urbanized global world, public spaces are therefore of critical importance in African and South African contexts, given the rapid rate of urbanization. Looking at African history, challenges of this post-colonial era remain layered upon an earlier one. Implementation of modern infrastructure and the denial of the importance of traditional African cultures during the colonial period was combined with separatism, a continent-wide form of apartheid which created zones of race and class, center and periphery, formal and informal. Therefore, the ways we consider and shape the public spaces of our cities for the better constitute a public good and an important and worthy pursuit of study and scholarship. Many of the challenges and themes that are central to ideas about public spaces are shared by many cities globally, and many of the tools of analysis and application in the global literature offer us valuable contributions to understanding public space environments. These include principles of community engagement, class considerations, sustainable development, and human rights imperatives, among others. But it is important to note that dominant modes of engaging these questions have typically been from Western perspectives and experience, instead of thinking and making public spaces from the histories, perspectives, and cultures across Africa and the global south. These dominant modes of engaging these questions have come from undermined local knowledges, practice and methodologies, and from other identities and spiritualities. Therefore, making public spaces in this context is also a critical question of new ways of collaborating, of looking at governance, of looking at planning and management of public spaces. Ultimately, this means that scholarship from Africa can enter into conversation with theory and approaches from other places, histories, and across different sectors. These contexts and challenges mean that the question of public space in African cities is both a quantitative question as much as it is a qualitative one. There is an urgency for focusing the thinking and making of public spaces in African cities as a public good that is part and parcel of the day-to-day life of its people. Let's now look at safety and inequalities. Due to the fact that public spaces are used by a wide range of people and groups in a variety of ways, public spaces can become places of contestation. Here's an example of the inner city of Johannesburg, where the destitute must resort to using parks and other public spaces as a shelter. In seeking a solution, the city of Johannesburg partnered with Wits University around a project focusing on park governance and homelessness. We found that there are people living in outlying areas of the city. These people are forced to sleep in parks during the week because they cannot afford to commute to work from home every day. Therefore, they only visit their homes on weekends. There are also seasonal workers from other provinces and from neighboring countries who sleep in public spaces for months so that the money they would have spent on rental can support their families back home. This reality of the diverse use of space often leads to difficulties in managing public spaces, including lack of safety. So we can see how social inequalities are manifested in a city's public spaces. Finally, informal economy. Public spaces are commonly defined as spaces where people normally have unrestricted access and right of way. These are typically parks and gardens. While this definition is not inaccurate, it does not engage with the larger question of systematic exclusions that are part and parcel of public space. It does not embrace areas that are less green, such as government buildings, universities, beaches, and streets. And streets, they are a key driver for the local economy, where many people make their living. Accommodating the variety of uses and needs in public spaces is a major challenge that speaks to the power relations of diverse actors and users of public spaces. Conflicts are evident in many African cities where governments want to take control and direct activities in public spaces. This affects the livelihoods of the urban poor. As we have seen earlier, co-creating and managing public spaces is very complex, since it relates to identity, safety, culture, livelihoods, and quality of life. Hence, rethinking the design and management of public spaces in African context is important, especially to ensure that there's an interaction between the formal and informal uses, residents, and public authorities. A more inclusive and co-productive approach that considers all stakeholders is needed. We will see a few examples of this in this module.